The Nepal Flood Mystery. Where did all that water come from? On August 26, 2026, something extraordinary